In this tutorial, I want to show you the very basics of working with Substance Painter. That's the program I have open right here, and you see inside it a sword that has materials on it. Now this is using a PBR, physically based renderer, in order to create these. Let's talk about how we can get this set up. What you see here in this view is a perspective viewport, which shows the model as a 3D object. You hold Alt and click and drag to orbit. Over here next to that is a two-dimensional view, and you see that the two-dimensional view is rendered as well. You have a shelf at the bottom which shows a number of different materials that you can plug in. And over here, a layers menu where you can drop in different materials. There's even folders in which you can do masking. So let's talk about how we can get this working. Over here in 3ds Max, I have a sword. Right? This is called sword_LP. I like to keep my low poly and high poly specified. If I open up my Unwrap UVW and open the UV editor, I'm going to turn off the show active display. And you can see my sword is completely UV unwrapped. Now you'll also notice that I've actually taken my UVs and made them fit inside a square UV layout here, but they're meant to be a 2:1 aspect ratio where it's twice as tall as it is wide. So I'm going to go in, and I don't need that unwrapped because it already is unwrapped. I've already baked that in. I've taken my sword and said File, Export Selected, and I've exported it out as a low poly. Now you see here I also have a HP, a high poly. So I'm going to hide this, right click and say Unhide by Name. I'm going to unhide my high poly. You'll notice that my high poly has these different colors on it, and that's because in the material editor I've set it up with a multi-sub-object material, meaning there's 3 different materials assigned to it. In this case, that is the only difference between my high poly and low poly. And the reason for that is I'm going to use these materials to create an ID mask, which makes masking inside Substance Painter a lot easier to use. The high poly does not need UV layout. All right, it is not important. All we're taking is the surface detail of the materials, as well as the shape and form of it that the vertex make. So those are both exported out. If I come into Substance Painter, the process is File, New, and you come in and select an object. So just for illustration purposes, I'm going to select the high poly. You'll see I've set a preset. In this case, I'm using Unity 5. There's lots of other ones. There's also Unreal Engine 4. There's even a non-PBR. A lot of the metals will not work with the non-PBR, just so you know. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and discard this. Now, you see here, I'm going to hold Alt and the middle mouse button, and then I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan, and then scroll to zoom out. Now, it's different here because all you're seeing is the blade. And the reason for that is if you look over here in texture sets, it's showing me that I have different materials. Remember I showed you that I had those different materials set up for the sword, and each one of those is going to come in here unique. It's going to set it up as having its own. So that's why I wanted to load up the high poly to show you that. So I'm not actually going to work with the high poly. I'm going to go File, New, Select it. I'm going to work with the low poly. So let's open that up. Again, I'm going to work with Unity 5. My document resolution is 2048. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to discard this. Okay, once again, hold Alt to zoom out. Hold Alt to pan over. Now, here's my sword. Here's its UV layout. So what I want to do is I want to bake my high poly detail to my low poly. So I'm going to come over here. I want to find texture set settings. Normally that's kind of hidden. It's a tab behind layers. I like to move mine over here so it's easier to get to. So I click Bake Mesh Maps. I want to change the output size to 1024 by 2048. I'm going to click High Definition Meshes and select the high poly and say Open. The rest of these settings I'm going to leave at default. I'm going to go to ID and change ID Baker parameters to Material Color and say Bake Sword Mesh Maps. Now it's going to go through and bake it out. This goes relatively quick in this case because there's not a lot of detail, and so it's coming out pretty fast. If I unlock. I've unlocked here my scene texture settings. I'll change this over to 1024 by 2048. I'm going to drag this up so you can see when you bake, these different maps are created. If I click, these are all the different ones that get baked out. These are combined together in order to make the material. One of them you'll notice is that ID map right there. So that's going to be useful to us. So to stay organized, over here in my layers menu, I'm gonna just use the trash can to remove the default layer and put in a folder. Now over here in materials, I'm gonna bring over a metal. So let's just drag down, find us a nice shiny. I'm going to drag it into folder 1. So now you see it's sitting there in folder 1 and the metal is applied to everything. I'm going to click on folder 1 itself and I'm going to right click on it now and come up to add mask with color selection. And now we're here in properties menu. Because I'm selected on color selection, it's now displayed here. If I click pick color, I can come over and I could click anywhere to select what color is going to have that metal assigned to it. And you don't see there's much difference because the default is gray, but you see the metal, it's kind of reflective on here. So let's hide it. Let's put on one that's going to be more obvious, another folder, and we're going to scroll up and let's throw this gold pure into this next folder. And if I say right click, add mask with color selection, and pick a color, there you go. Now you can see the gold is showing up on there. We'll do one more folder, and then this one we'll put simple material. Let's just put this, let's drag in this leather bag. We'll put that on there, and then once again, I'm going to right click, add mask with color selection, pick the color, and there we go. Now the mask, you see the leathers being assigned to the handle. You got the gold on the handguard, and then you have the metal on this sword blade. So from here, I'm just going to do File, Save. I'm going to save over my original file. And now I'm going to do File, Export Textures. So I want to export out my textures. So I'm going to specify this folder location. Let's say Select Folder. And then I can specify how I want to export out the textures. I'm going to export these out as Unity 5. Alright, that finished. And now if I come over here, I can open up my folder. There inside my Master Sword folder, you can see Sword LP, Sword Albedo Transparency, Metallic Smoothness, Sword Normal. The naming convention is the name of the mesh, and then the name of the material, and then the specific maps that get plugged into it.